Yeah,
Okay.
if you have it, I'll take it.
At 7 o'clock. All right, I'm going to call the Personnel Administrative Affairs Committee to order. Today is Monday, July 3rd, 2023, and it is 7 p.m. We are in the Aldermanic Chamber. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderwoman at Large Shoshana Kelly, Chairwoman.
I'm here.
Alderman at Large Ben Clemens, Vice Chair.
Here.
Alderman Tyler Govea.
Here.
Alderman Thomas Lopez. Alderman Derek Tebow is here. You have 4 members. And we also have in attendance Alderman John Sullivan, Alderwoman Gloria Timmons, and Alderman Patricia Klee.
Thank you. I'm going to call for public comment. There's nobody in the chamber as of right now. Communications,
There is none.
interviews,
Greeley, do you want me to read the ones or no one's here?
no, you can just skip.
Okay. For the Greeley Park Advisory Committee, we have Stephanie P. Ballantyne, new appointment, term to expire June 13th, 2026, 9 Bartlett Avenue, Nashua, New Hampshire, 03064.
Thank you. Ms. Ballantyne, you can come and join us here in the horseshoe. And I believe Alderman Klee is going to introduce you because the mayor was unable to make it this evening. Wherever you want to sit.
Yeah, it's like a lot of options.
There are many options. Go ahead, Alderman Klee.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. The mayor asked for me to send his apologies for not being able to make it today. I am the Ward 3 Alderman, and Mrs. Ballantyne lives in my ward, and I've known her since I've been an alderman, a little bit before that as well. She has lived in Nashua since 1987. She's lived on Bartlett, which abuts the Greeley Park for 22 years, if I'm not mistaken. She has been a very strong advocate for the Friends of Greeley, which is just a community group. There's no funding or anything like that. They're not connected with the city for a number of years as well. Stephanie, as well as her husband, are strong advocates for Nashua. You can see them biking and walking through the various parts of the city, through the park and so on. As I am not the mayor, I am going to let Mrs. Ballantyne speak more for herself, so thank you.
Ms. Ballantyne? Hi.
Well, that was pretty much summed it up. I've been on Bartlett for 25 years.
Oh, sorry.
I'm originally from Georgia and the Carolinas. I am practicing.
Can you just pause for 1 second? I don't think you have a mic at your seat for whatever reason.
Oh, is it not plugged? Oh, you want me to move over?
Yeah, you just move over one.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that.
Do I have to push it?
Nope.
You
Nope.
don't have to
okay.
push it the direction. You can just move
Does
it
that
a
one
little
work?
closer, But I didn't see one in.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh.
I had moved it down.
Oh.
Yeah, you have to talk into it so
Oh,
that
all right.
the transcription
Okay.
has to hear you.
If you don't mind starting over, sorry about
Oh,
that.
no,
Thank you.
no, okay. Transcription. I'm Stephanie Ballantyne. Thanks for inviting me. I have lived in Nashua, as Trish Klee said, since 1987 when our daughter was 2 weeks old. I'm originally from Georgia and the Carolinas. I have a great appreciation for the woods and green spaces. I am currently a practicing nurse practitioner and assistant professor in the graduate nursing program at Rivier University. I also work as a per diem on the mobile health clinic. We have been probably one of my first experiences in Nashua and that I can remember with a 2-week-old baby was taking the stroller through Greeley Park and enjoying the peace and the quiet and the green space. We had bought a home when we moved here, so we were very fortunate to have a yard, and we still do. But we have strived to protect the green spaces or to advocate for the green spaces in Nashua, particularly Greeley Park, because it's just, you know, if you look it up online, it's always described as one of the gems of Nashua. And one of my favorite things to do is to drive down Concord Street and see the families, everyone out there, and just see the whole grounds with different families and groups involved in barbecues and playing games and whatnot. And the prom girls and guys, when they come to have their photos done, there's just so many things that go on at Greeley Park that incorporate the nature and the natural beauty of the park. And I think also, I was thinking earlier today, with all the, fortunately, we're building a lot of housing in Nashua, but it's all straight up for lack of space. It's apartments, and they don't really have that much green space. So I feel like a lot of these families need it even more. And I'm just, I'm all about preserving it and maintaining it for the purpose that Mr. Greeley left it for and donated it to the city for, which is to relax and enjoy nature. We have been, I'm an officer on the Friends of Greeley Park, which is, as Trish said, a sort of a loose organization that a lot of us developed, actually quite a lot of us, I was looking through the folder, back in, I believe it was 2000, late 17 or 18. And a friend Murphy was also very involved in that. A number of people around the city and people who lived in the North End. So I guess that's me.
Thank you, Ms. Valentine. Other questions from the committee?
Yeah.
Alderman Clemmons.
Thank you. No questions, just your reputation is stellar when it comes to Greeley Park. I've been on the Board of Aldermen for a very long time, and you've always been an advocate for anything that comes before Greeley Park.
Sometimes.
And so that's, it goes without saying, in my opinion, that you are a natural person to put on this committee. So thank you for your stewardship of the park, your appreciation of it, and I think you'll serve on that committee well.
Thank you.
Alderman Tebow.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Yeah, to echo Alderman Clemmons' comments, I mean, you're the perfect fit to be on this committee. And, Greeley Park's one of the gems. It's keeping the green space in Nashua is super important. I mean, we need that park. People come from all around to go to that park. So it's good to get people that really care to be on there. So it's good to find someone that really cares and wants to make sure that it stays, there, and maybe, do other things to enhance it in a way that,
I have ideas.
Did we ever get the band shell completed?
I would love,
yet?
yes, I have a lovely picture of one in South Carolina that would fit just right in.
But thank you so much for stepping up, and it's hard to fill committees sometimes because people, it's a volunteer thing, so you're giving your time to it, so thank you so much for doing that.
Thank you.
Ms. Valentine, you said you have ideas. I'd love to hear them, because that was going to be one of my questions. Is I think that the park has such great opportunities for the city. There are some things that could use some attention, so I'm interested in your ideas.
Well, first off, and I think it would be fairly inexpensive. In fact, we had even talked about trying to raise funds for the Friends of Greeley, and we just never did it, is to get that blue tarp off the fountain in the winter. It's such to me, it's just an unaesthetic thing in that beautiful park. It's when it's covered in snow and right there against the bathhouse. Seems like there should be another way to cover it. So there's that. And then the band shell, I think has been a source of a lot of angst and argument and everything. I love hearing it. I'm a neighbor. I'm not a NIMBY. I'm an abutter, so I have been privileged, with maybe having a greater awareness, but yeah, the band shell, it just doesn't, everything costs more than you expect it to, I guess, so, but it wouldn't, I don't know, it would be nice to fix that. Also, the tennis courts are great down there, and now that you've got pickleball lines there, it's just so nice to see people on them. They're just constantly in use. I'm still a tennis player, but I like seeing the pickleball players. But I think to expand the gardens, is that on the list? It seems like there's so much space down there. I'm not sure why there should ever be a wait list for a garden space. And again, the folks who are in the apartments one of the problems with living in an apartment is you just feel more like a temporary Nashua citizen, and I think if you had a little piece of the garden that was yours, at least for the summer, it's just another connection to the city and another involvement point for the citizens to have. So that, I'd like to see the gardens expanded. Maybe get some of those trucks out.
Soon.
Yeah,
So, yeah, thank you. Alderman Clee?
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to add something. When I was talking to Mrs. Valentine prior to this meeting, I had told her that one of the current projects is the stone house, the roof and so on. And her first immediate reaction were, if they start working on those bathrooms, they have to make them ADA compliant. So she goes beyond just the thinking of the park itself. She looks at the whole picture. So I just kind of wanted to add that to it, that that was one of her thoughts and so on. And I said, right now, I don't think we're working inside, we're only on the outside.
I hope. Yeah.
So I did reassure that, but it did kind of hit me that she went beyond looking at the green space of the park and so on. She was looking at making sure that the city did it right, so.
Well, I'm in healthcare, so I'm always thinking about the rules and regs, it's a lot of them.
Anything else? Okay, great. Thank you, Ms. Valentine. We'll
Thank
take
you.
up your appointment in about 30 seconds, but thank you.
Thanks. How's your chicken, Shoshana?
My chickens are good.
Good.
Still got 2 of them.
Me too.
I'm gonna make a homemade angel food cake tomorrow with my egg whites. They come out good. Okay, I believe that is all we have for the interviews this evening. So we'll move on to applicants to license hawkers, peddlers, itinerant vendors license.
There is none.
Appointments by the mayor.
I'd like to make a motion to recommend the following new appointment to the Greeley Park Advisory Committee, Stephanie P. Ballantyne, with a term to expire June 13th, 2026.
Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Okay, unfinished business.
There's none.
New business resolutions,
None.
new business ordinances,
None.
tabled in committee.
I'd like to make a motion to recommend to take off the table O-23-054 relative to public comment.
That's
And-
weird. The script is wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, yes. Okay, so the motion is to remove from the table. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Now we need to make a word.
Yep. I'd like to make a motion to recommend final passage of O-23-054 relative to public comment.
Okay, the motion before us is to recommend final passage of O-23-054. I know many of you are here to discuss that, and I know that we also have Attorney Bolton here joining us, because last time we had some questions around the legalities of this. So I'm going to open up the floor for questions and discussion. Alderman Timmons.
Oh, thank you. I think I have to think about this public comment thing. I did endorse it, but I endorsed it because I feel that people are right to speak their mind. However, I just want to tell you a little bit about why I'm changing my mind on this particular subject of public comment, and what you should and should not say in it. As you know, I'm a veteran, and I went in the military when there was all volunteer, females in one barracks, males in another barracks. We wasn't integrated. Then they integrated us, and I went into combat support, and I got a bonus, the only reason why I went into that particular field. So I went into a male-dominated field. So I went to my first duty station in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and when I was there, they said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "This is my unit." They said, "No, all men in this unit." I said, "Well, not anymore." And he said, "Wait a minute, I'll be right back." So he went out, came back with all these other first sergeants in the battalion. I said, she's in our battalion. I was like, you sure? No, I went to basic training in Fort McClellan, Alabama. It was air defense artillery. So they said, do you have orders? And I know that they was really thought it was funny. So I said, okay, yeah. Showed them my orders. They said, we don't have any spot for you. Are you the only one? I said, there's a whole bunch of us. I just came 2 weeks earlier because I had children and they needed to find a place to live. I had all 3 kids with me. So I came 2 weeks earlier to this particular unit. So to make a long story short, the first day of going into the unit and doing PT, physical training, we were in, the females were all incorporated into the battalion in the formation. Their little shirts and their little shorts on, and we was beginning to do our running. As we start running, the men start saying really horrible things, nasty, talking about women and getting them pregnant and having them barefoot. And we're talking about, I know this was before you guys was born, but I was insulted, totally insulted about it. So what I did was stop running. I'm not running to somebody who's talking about women, using all kinds of profanity. I said, until you guys change, I'm not running. I don't care what you say, I will not run to that type of language. And it was horrible. So I said to them, they said, well, you can't do that. I said, well, I'm not running. So I got all the girls, all the women, young ladies, in the battalion not to run. Then I started the EEOC for the military, that you cannot use that type of language around other people because it gives them a feeling of not belonging. It's derogatory, it's insulting, and on and on and on. I could really show you all the information about it. So I feel like a hypocrite if I approve any type of language here, when I fought so hard against it when I was in the military. So I would never support any type of language that use any type of derogatory words. You can't scream a bomb in the airport. You can't do certain things because it starts all kinds of panics. You just can't do it. You shouldn't be able to come in here and say whatever you want to say and don't think we're not offended by it, because we are offended by it. So I think it should be some decorum in our meetings. We have children that's watching these programs, and when you come here and start screaming at us and start calling us names, it is just not right. So I would never support anything about a public comment that you can say whatever you want to say in a meeting and do not think it's going to have repercussions. So I would never support a public comment where you are just free to say anything. It's a slippery slope, and I just can't support it.
Alderman Gouveia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I totally agree with what my colleague to my right has to say. I think this should be a place where we can exchange ideas and do it with a level of decorum and professionality, and I think we do that very well inside the horseshoe here. With that being said, the original ordinance came from the being threatened with a lawsuit from the ACLU. And in looking over the ordinance today, I was reading what is point 11, which would be point 10 after, if this was to be approved, saying the providing officer has the authority to terminate the remarks of any speaker when such remarks do not adhere to this ordinance or other applicable laws. That to me, and I believe I said it when we first, because I supported the language when we added it in the first time, that right there supports that we can terminate public comment for any of the reasons listed above, including breaking decorum rules that we follow in this chamber through the set of rules that we adopted. So I feel that this is kind of redundant language, and it was language that I did approve the first time here because I thought it was right, and I still do think it is right. I think we shouldn't be using this type of language or anything profane in the chamber. But at the same time, when you have an organization that's threatening suit, I think it's time to look at it. And is this the fight we want to pick? And I think it was Alderman Clemens brought it up at the last meeting, was I don't think anybody here wants it to happen. I think it's how risk adverse are you? Do you want to keep it in there and maybe go down a path that involves a lawsuit? Or do we take it out knowing that you still have the full protections under the rules that we adopted? Do we have to have it in ordinance? Personally, in my beliefs, I don't think we do, to be able to still hold us to the same level of decorum as we all expect here. And my risk adversity on this, like we talked about, was rather low. I don't feel like this is where we should be digging our heels in the sand, because it's already there. We can already terminate that public comment, should something happen. And hopefully it doesn't. I don't think any of us want to see it happen. But that's kind of where I stand on it now, and why, at least in my mind, the ordinance came through, and why I signed on to it as a co-writer with Alderman Sullivan and Alderman Camo, was because of the threat of that lawsuit. And it was to try to be a little proactive for the city. And obviously we've talked about possibly some amended language, which I would be interested in hearing. But at the end of the day, I still think that point number 11, as it is right now, would be sufficient to do the level and quality of business that we want to do in the chamber.
Can I have a follow-up, please?
If you don't mind, I actually was gonna ask Attorney Bolton to
Yeah, oh,
clarify a
that's
couple
what
of things.
I was gonna ask that
That's,
same
I was gonna
question.
pivot to him
That's
for a
exactly
second,
what I was
because I
gonna
think that's the whole
Yes.
reason we put it on the table. So,
Okay.
Attorney Bolton, so when we met previously, especially number 10, where we talk about crude, vulgar, profane, and obscene remarks, was something that the committee was concerned about the legality of. So can you speak to that specific portion of it, or just your general counsel on this ordinance?
It's unsettled as far as what the law allows or doesn't allow in terms of the language, the words that I believe that provision is designed to prohibit. I think it's probably somewhere from 3 to 6 out of the millions of words in the English language. That being the case, there are plenty of alternatives that would allow someone to make their point if their vocabulary was sufficient. So alternative means of communication is one of the things that courts look at when there's a restriction on speech in any situation. Often it's said that reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions are permissible. So this would be a restriction on the manner of someone making their point. The New Hampshire chapter of the American Civil Liberties Union, apparently someone there read a case from Massachusetts which prohibited discourteous or slanderous speech. The Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court said, well, that doesn't pass muster. It's vague. It provides too much discretion. They looked at the way it was applied in a particular case. The speaker was criticizing the members of the town's select board. And it was clear that it was that criticism of the board that they considered to be discourteous. And she was first ordered to leave, and then it was suggested that the police would remove her if she did not cease. The Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court basically threw out their whole prohibition, which concerned, as I said, discourteous and slanderous speech. I think your ordinance is nothing like the Massachusetts ordinance that was at issue in that case. So I don't think that's precedential in any way. There's an old case from California, where someone was in the courthouse wearing a jacket that on the back indicated that he was not in favor of the draft, using one of the crudest words in the English language to express that disapproval. Cohen versus California. That went all the way to the United States Supreme Court, and they held in the context that that word was displayed, that was within the free speech rights of the wearer, and prohibited the sanctions for which he was arrested. So that case might be precedential. On the other hand, this is not your meetings are not as discreet as a courthouse, where typically you would only find adults, only find people who somehow got themselves involved in a situation where they were in that courthouse. Your meetings are televised over the local cable system. We often have children who attend in person our meetings, particularly when there are recognition proceedings to honor children who may have had some achievement, whether academically or athletically or otherwise, and they would be subjected to inappropriate language that their parents would not desire them to hear. Same is true if they were watching at home over the local cable system. Their parents may be reluctant to allow them to watch our meetings. I believe I've heard that in occasional classes in our elementary and secondary schools, that teachers will in fact assign classes to watch a meeting or two meetings in order to learn what they can about government and civics in our country and in our city. If they would be exposed to things their parents do not wish them to be exposed to in terms of language, that I think we lose that value of the educational experience. There's also, it's true that there is an interest in government showing itself to be dignified and reasoned and behave in a way that demonstrates a manner of decorum, so that decisions are made deliberately, logically, and for good reason, not as a result of who is most offensive and most vocal. So all of those considerations would come up if there were litigation over this. I think, and it's my opinion, that we would prevail in a lawsuit if the crude, vulgar, profane, and obscene language prohibition remained enacted. I could be wrong. This is not black letter law. It's not open and shut. It's the kind of issue that could go to the US Supreme Court, and you'd get a divided court issuing opinions 6-3, 7-2, 5-4. And if you asked 100 lawyers, you might get 98 different opinions as to how it would turn out. So I can't provide you any guarantees. If there were litigation, if we lost, there may be a cost involved. If we win, unlikely to be much cost. But I do not think that eliminating the language prohibiting, or eliminating the words of the ordinance that prohibit vulgar and crude language, and just relying on the presiding officer has authority to terminate the remarks of any speaker when such remarks do not adhere to this ordinance. Well, if you take this language out, the speaker, the presiding officer will have lost the right to terminate someone's remarks for the use of the sort of foul language that this ordinance is addressed to. I think if you eliminate this, the odds are you're going to get more crude language at the public comment period. If you're willing to have that, no one's going to die as a result. But I think the board as a whole, city government as a whole, will not be as respected. And as I say, I think you lose some of the opportunity for children to grow up with knowledge of how local government works. So it's not up to me, it's up to all of you.
Thank you, Attorney Bolton. Alderman Tebow.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. I got one question and then a comment or two. If I can ask a question through you to Alderman Gobert.
Sure.
Easy question. Do you believe in free speech?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. I'll follow up. So I think we're all in the same agreement. I think we all believe in free speech. But yet, you just said that you agree with the sentiment of it, not putting it in here, but you agree that people should not be doing what we put in there. So I would not go around to anyone that has done that and say he's against free speech just because you believe the same thing at the end of the day that I do. Just how to get there may be a little different, right?
Totally. Yep.
And so, I heard even today, oh, Alderman Tebow, you're gonna suppress free speech again, and you're gonna make your peers not talk and stuff like that. I'm like, I didn't create this or anything. But, we do limit free speech all the time, whether we want to or not. Like, I've said before, 3-minute limit, that limits it, right? People can't come in here with signs. Anytime people are holding up signs, the president or the chairperson tells them to put the signs down, right? Signs are a way of free speech. You have something on a sign. What if the person can't speak, right? You get a sign, right? Obviously slander. I mean, when we get down to this, we created this because one citizen said some bad words in here, right? And then at some point, one of us said something that person didn't like, which is his right to free speech, and now she's suing him. So we do have limits out there of what people can say, right? You can't slander somebody or think you slandered somebody because you can get brought to court. The other thing, I don't know why we're so afraid of the ACLU when we have 13 or 14 other suits that we haven't tried to put in any ordinances to try to fix the right to know or do anything in the city to maybe make it easier for that to occur so we don't have to have those 13 or 14 other suits, right? So why are we worried so much about this one? Is part of that. I mean, I'm 100% for free speech. I just want, like the founding fathers would say, right? Civil discourse, right? And Attorney Bolton said it exactly. There's a billion words you can say instead of a word that somebody used. And to even be going over this, to me, it seems kind of dumb because I think we all believe the same thing. Alderman Clemens, and maybe he'll speak to it, but he had suggested a amended type version maybe to look at where we take out a couple of these words, but yet we still have some language in there that kind of protects us to be able to do something about it if it happens. I was more amended to going that way if that's what he's going to do. Then, so kind of meet in the middle a little bit about this. I think that's the better way to go. But again, I'll reiterate, everybody here is for free speech. We all want people to be able to come in here. They can yell at us, they can call us names. I get it online all the time, I get it in emails. We get it here. And, you know, we got it at the budget meeting where we were called shameful. I think the mayor was a disgrace, like, right? We can say those, everybody can say that stuff. But there's a couple things that maybe we shouldn't say, you know? It's just not the right thing to do if we want a civil discourse, so thank you.
Alderman Clemmons and Alderman Clee.
Thank you. So the previous speakers mentioned the fact that I was thinking about changing or maybe doing an amendment to keep some of the language in here. And before I did that, I wanted to ask a question through the chair to Attorney Bolton. And the question would be that instead of, what if we just eliminated the words crude and vulgar and kept into the ordinances profane and obscene remarks are prohibited? My concern, and let me preface my question by saying that my concern is that a court might say that crude language could be interpreted as being language that maybe somebody who doesn't have a strong English vocabulary could be crude, could be interpreted that way. Or, as was brought up at the last meeting, vulgar was things that were vulgar 100 years ago are no longer vulgar today. So my question is, if we took those two words out and left the profane and obscene remarks, do you think that the ordinance would still be as strong as it is today, or?
Attorney Bolton?
I don't think that makes much difference.
Can you elaborate? It's the reason why.
I think, as used, they're synonyms. I think you're still left with the same thing. I have no problem particularly. I think the case would look identical whether crude and vulgar remained or crude and vulgar were left out. So.
Okay. So can I continue?
Alderman Clemmons.
So thank you. So I mean, with that being said, I mean, if we could get a unanimous vote out of it by taking out those first two words, or if we could get, so if we thought that we could come to some agreement to do that, I'd be willing to entertain that. I'd like to hear what the two authors of the legislation think of that before I make the motion. But again, I think it's how risk averse are you? To me, I think that we need some kind of prohibition in there, because we don't want to allow that language, and we all know what language we're talking about here. And so we don't want the public to come up here and be able to say that. And if you think that that is a limitation of your free speech, again, I feel sorry for someone who thinks that. Because if you have to throw an F-bomb to get your point across, then you don't have a very good grasp of the English language, and I feel sorry for people like that, and I would encourage them to go to the library or look at a thesaurus. But we can't allow that behavior, we can't allow that language here. It's not right. There's children that do come in here, as the attorney told us, that watch on TV. We have to have community standards, and the buck has to stop somewhere. And to me, I think we need some kind of prohibition to those kind of remarks.
Thank you, Alderman Clemmons. Alderman Clee, then Alderman Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. The threat of us being attacked, that we don't believe in free speech if we don't strike number 10, to me is not accurate in any way, shape, or form. I don't think there's anyone among this horseshoe who doesn't believe in free speech and would fight to the death for it. I'm glad that Attorney Bolton made the comment about that if we strike number 10, the new number 10, or what number 11 is ineffective. And I've watched that here in this horseshoe when a chairperson or the president has said, we will not accept that kind of language, or we will not accept this kind of thing. And then people pout and yell and walk out, and we just take more wrath. We take it on social media, we take it on this. They're stopping my free speech. That is actually more stopping your free speech, because you're in the middle of speaking when you've had to do that. And there's no bite behind that. That is not acceptable in here. To say that to someone, they're gonna say, well, what is acceptable? Let me see your regulations. We get that all the time. Let me see the ordinance that guides this. So this one comment doesn't mean anything. When I was growing up, I lived outside of Westover Air Force Base. So you have a lot of salty airmen and Navy and Marines. We had everybody there. And I remember one time being in church, and one of the military said something quite foul and vulgar. And my mother looked at me and she said, I don't ever want to hear those words coming out of your mouth. Because her favorite thing to say was that swearing or such language was a sign of ignorance. And I got upset with her because I thought she was trying to say that these people were unintelligent. And that's not what she meant. She just meant that they grabbed the low-hanging fruit. They grabbed the easy words to describe. And as Attorney Bolton has said, those 3, 6, 10 words that we would all say just don't belong in this room, there are other words that can describe that person's feeling. The F-bomb, yeah, that's a real easy one to say, and it does make your point. But at the same time, we don't want to hear our children saying it. When and there's been more than one person that has used something in this chamber that shouldn't have been said. It was on Zoom, it's been here in this very room. I had a parent that called me and said that her child was watching live and had to explain to that child why that was a bad thing and so on. That child was not a fourth grade or something, it was a little older than fourth grade. But that child did have an assignment to watch a government proceeding. And so she had them watch it on that show. I know I had talked to Alderman Clemmons that if this does pass and we get rid of these words, that I'm going to suggest that we don't go live anymore. Because we can't ask these CTV people to do a 5-minute delay or 50-second delay or something so they can bleep out those words. I would not put that on them. That means it's got to be edited, and then it can go the next day. That, to me, would hurt our public. We are transparent here. We want them to see it live so that when I walk out this room, if they don't like what I said, they're going to call me or they're going to send me an email. Right there. There's no hiding behind anything. I truly do not believe that the current item number 11 is redundant under anything, and I don't think that we should buckle down to the threat of a suit. Do I think ACLU will come after us? Oh, absolutely I do, because that's what they do. That is what they do. I hope that we win it. If we don't, maybe this is going to go to the Supreme Court. Who knows? But I don't think that we should just buckle down because we don't like it. It isn't the same case as Massachusetts. I don't think it's the same case as the courtroom where somebody put it on their jacket. This is live. The children are here. Children are watching on TV. We can't do that 15-second delay. I find that I respect the ACLU on so many levels, but they're also very single-minded in that they want to uphold all of the laws as they see that. That's nothing against them. I think they're doing a phenomenal job. And I know the lawyer that had contacted the city through the letter, I know him to be an extraordinary lawyer and so on, but Personally, I just find that to get rid of this, and whether we got rid of crude or vulgar, because I look at crude, vulgar, profane, and obscene as all the same. I do understand what you're saying relative to the vulgar, meaning that it could be, or crude, how someone describes something. So I could live without those two words. I think that would probably be more redundant than anything else like that. I don't think voting against this means that you're against free speech, because people come out here and say anything they want. I have stood here, I sat there in the budget meeting when I was referenced twice of having said something. I did not correct them because it was their right to say it. Did they say it proper and in the right context? No. But I didn't correct them because they have the right to say that. I will correct it in another time and another date. I did not interrupt them. I did not ask to speak afterwards. And I'm not even saying here what it was or what it wasn't, because I do believe everybody has the right to say it. Do I like being yelled at? No. Do I like being told, shame, shame on you? No. Does it get under my skin at times? Yes. But hey, that's the way life is. And as Attorney Bolton has explained to me probably more than once, I'm an elected official and I asked to be in this seat, and part of that is taking that kind of criticism. So I've got to toughen up my skin and deal with it. But I don't think anybody has the right to use that kind of language. Even not just children. There are men and women that find it so offensive, they might not come to hear. And that would bother me equally. So thank you for letting me speak.
Alderman Sullivan?
Thank you very much. I think that, I thought about this a lot over the weekend and when I planned on coming here, and I think we all want the same outcome, which is interesting. We all want nice, decent meetings. And I think it's just a question of how we get there. I think that, people have the right to say whatever they want. They also have the right to say it however they want to. That's the cost of living in a free country. It may be inappropriate, but it's free speech. To me, I'm an absolutist when it comes to free speech. You can say what you want. You can say however you want to say it. I think that Alderman GOV talking about a lawsuit, if we win, if we don't want to win. For me, I don't want to go into court at all, period. Never mind handicap, whether or not we're going to win it against, the ACLU and their team of lawyers. It said in that letter quite clearly, and I never thought when I signed up to be an alderman that I would be sitting here advocating for the First Amendment of the United States of America in the Constitution. The First Amendment that they thought was so important that they put it first. The right to expression, the right to free speech. I never thought that I would be arguing that. And I think that, when I voted against this the first time, Alderwoman Timmons brought it up earlier about the slippery slope. I was concerned because I saw a pattern, Zoom, the packets, the communication of the packets, I just saw a trend line and it got me concerned. And then when I saw this, I thought we're slowly moving the goalpost in the opposite direction. I think one of the biggest problems that we have in this chamber is what you see out there. There's nobody here. Nobody comes, hardly, to speak in public. There's maybe a group that I could count on less than 2 hands that consistently come and show up. And I think that the ordinance before was an ordinance looking for a problem. I think it happened in a finance meeting. Since I've been an alderman, granted, my history is not as long and distinguished as some of my colleagues, but I have yet to hear inappropriate language of any type in this chamber, in any committee meeting or in any general meeting that we've had. I haven't heard it since January of 2022. And there have been some pretty heated debates here. Masks, barriers, taxes. And I haven't heard it. I did hear the one instance that we're talking about because someone told me about it and I watched it. And I thought that that language was inappropriate. I wouldn't have used it. But anybody that says it, they have the right to say it. They do. It's free speech. It's expression. They can say it whatever they want and however they want to say it. The Constitution protects us for that specific reason. That's all I have to say.
Pierre?
Okay. Alderman Timmons, then Alderman Clemmons.
Thank you, Chair. I hate to disagree with you, my colleague from Ward 9. You cannot say anything you want to say, any way you want to say it, any way you want to say. Free speech does not mean that. If you even read, or I would say, because we stopped doing that, the Star Spangled Banner has been altered. It's been altered for a reason. Go back and read the whole Star Spangled Banner, and you realize that they took it out of that because of that, because of what it was saying. That would have been free speech, but they don't do that anymore. You cannot say and do whatever you want to say and do without repercussions. And it just does not happen. It doesn't happen in the United States of America. It doesn't happen in the military at all. You cannot do that. You do have a right for free speech with the exception that it does not impede on other people's rights. You cannot come in here and just say anything you want. There is the repercussion of what you say. So if it was free speech, you should be able to say whatever you want to say regardless and nothing happened to you. I'm going to tell you right now, right here in this building, I was attacked down to City Hall. We're in court because of her free speech, because I'm suing. So you cannot say and do whatever you want to do, whenever you want to do. And I do believe in free speech, but there is exception to every single thing. And you go look it up. The Star Spangled Banner is not what we sing, okay? Look at all the lyrics in the Star Spangled Banner. You'll be sick, because I am. That's why I don't like that song, because we know, because you don't hear it all. You need to go and read the whole Star Spangled Banner, then you'll know what I'm talking about, okay? You only hear what they sing, but if you read the whole lyrics on the whole entire Star Spangled Banner, you'll see that it's very, very bad, very derogatory. It's against people like me. So you cannot say, and you cannot do whatever you want to do, any way you want to do. And I do believe in free speech because I was in the military. We actually talked about that all the time. Free speech. You have a right to say what you wanted to say. However, you're going to reap the repercussions of that, what you say. Doesn't mean that you can go in there and you can't do it. You can't call, there's a bomb on the plane. That's free speech. You can't do it. So it's not true that you can say and do whatever you want to do. It's just simply not true.
Alderman Clemmons and Alderman Tebow.
Yeah, I just want to respond to something that was said, and free speech, you have the right to free speech out in the world, on your own, in your own house, on your own property, on the street. You have the right to say whatever you want to say. But that gets limited depending on where you are and what the context is about what you're discussing. As was mentioned, you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. You can't yell that there's a bomb on a plane and make threats. You can't disrupt a courtroom. You know, you can't just go into the middle of a proceeding and just start chanting. The judge has the right to tell you no and to get out. That's a government entity. there's decorum in places and that matters. And to simply put it as somebody can come in and say whatever they want, whenever they want it, and we have to just accept it, no, we don't. No, we don't. And when we do that, we are basically saying to the public, come to our free-for-all and say whatever you want, because we're not going to do anything about it. You have 3 minutes, go. And that to me is just wrong. To me, I was raised to believe in free speech. I was raised to fight for free speech. I fought for free speech here in this chamber. There were some aldermen who wanted to take away public comment altogether while I've been on the board. There are some aldermen in the past that wanted to limit it to only residents of Nashua, only taxpayers of Nashua. There are some aldermen here in the past that have wanted to limit it to only things that are on the agenda and do away with the second comment period. I fought against every single one of those things because I believe that it's important that we hear from the public, that they have the right to come in and tell us how they feel. And they can do it without being vulgar, they can do it without being profane, and they can do it without being obscene. And you do not need to say those words to get your point across. There is a time and a place for everything. I am probably one of the most inappropriate people once you get a few drinks in me out somewhere. But I do that in the privacy of my own company. And I would never behave that way in a setting like this. It's wrong. It's just wrong. And I was raised to uphold those values. And to uphold those values here in this chamber, in this city that I so respect. And, like I said, I'm willing to compromise and take out the first two words if we think that we can get some support for that. But eliminating this altogether, I can't do it.
Alderman Tebow?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't think people not being here is the result of not being able to say what they can or can't say. I think generally people are apathetic toward government, and I don't think that's based on whether they can come in here and yell at us or not. The people that want to yell at us do come in and yell at us. Someone said at the budget meeting at North, they turned around and said, see, this is why, you guys don't get anybody to come to these meetings. And my first thought was, yeah, because most people think as legislators, we're doing a good job. The 10 or 15 people that didn't, they're the ones that showed up and, yelled at us. I'm not offended by these words personally. I've been called everything for a long time. As you guys know, my temper gets hot sometimes. And so people have called me many things. And so the words don't bother me, but I think, what if there's a kid in the front row and the kid is, say, black, and somebody comes up there and starts to use racist, awful terms? I am not hurt. Well, I am offended by that for the person that's hearing that. And that's, to me, and again, that's a hypothetical, it's never happened, and I hope it doesn't ever happen, but it, happened to Gloria when she walked in. Nobody knew who she was, Alderwoman Timmons rather. Nobody knew that she was an alderwoman when that person, attacked her with verbal abuse. And so it can happen, and she was with one of her grandchildren who... Two of them, who obviously heard the language. And again, that wasn't in here, but it was in the building, or right outside the building. And so, that stuff could happen, and I think that to me is offensive to people. If we're an absolutist, why don't we allow signs? Why don't we just let unlimited speech instead of 3 minutes? We should just allow slander. When you think about it, the founding fathers, if we're an absolutist, we would have slaves and women wouldn't have the right to say what they want either. So you can't go by that and say, oh, I'm going by it. Somebody 300 years ago said it, and we can't have any even little bit of limits on it. But they had lots of limits then, because a lot of people couldn't speak. I don't even think poor white men could speak. So, you know, there are limits in this world. I can't go into work and start yelling crazy things. They'll fire me on the spot. If you go into a bar and start yelling crazy things, you might get around, you might get some leeway, but eventually they're gonna kick you out. So why is this any different than a space where we should have decorum? I don't understand that, but that's it. Thanks.
So I'm going to weigh in here for a minute. It's been interesting hearing everyone speaking, and I am one who has gotten sort of caught up in crude versus vulgar and profane versus obscene. I'm a writer, that's what I do for a living, so I think about the nuance of language and how it's changed, and I do still have some concern with what does crude mean to the person who's sitting on this side deciding. However, I also think that we have the right to have decorum in this room, just like they expect that same thing from us. So if you think about, if we flip it, if you walked into the Supreme Court and spoke the way that some of these pieces that we've seen in the last 3 or 4 years, you would be kicked out because there's decorum, because there are things that you can and cannot do in those chambers. And I actually did some research. I defined every one of those words so your definitions come up correct, even though there are nuances to those definitions. But I was on ACLU's website, and they have a whole section on this. And one of the things it says is government can limit some protected speech by imposing time, place, and manner. That's all we're doing. All we're doing is saying that in this chamber, you are allowed to express whatever it is that you would like to express, but you have to do it within the decorum of this chamber so that we can continue the work of the city. Alderman Clee.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Since this came up again, one of the things is that social media it's run rampant. There's attacks on those who are against this. And I think it was even said here that, you know, that we're not supporting the First Amendment if we don't do that. And I don't know whether that's how it was meant or anything, but I kind of find it ironic. One of the posts that I read went on and on about how horrible we were and that we were stopping their freedom of speech. And it went on and in detail and with some vulgarity and so on. And the last statement was, now let's talk about getting rid of some of those books in the library. I was like, whoa, okay. I don't know if the person actually understood what they were saying. So, you know, when people say free speech, it's like, I want to be able to say whatever I want, but I don't want you to be able to read whatever you want. Free speech, if you want to go that far, is free speech. And to get rid of a book out of a library is taking away that author's free speech and my right to be able to get free access to that particular book. So I'm only saying this because we tend sometimes to use this First Amendment, Second Amendment, when it suits the particular case that we have. And there has been more than one case when words that shouldn't have been used, both while I've been on the board and prior to that. So I do think it's only a small handful of people that are doing this, but I can tell you, after watching the Zoom, and a gentleman who was not happy with us because we had masks and we were doing Zoom, who walked on completely naked and then grabbed a baby and put the baby in the key place and sat down and thought that was funny. Because he could and because he got away with it. We are gonna get people that are gonna come in here the minute we say this is done, and we're gonna be listening to George Carlin's 7 words that should never have been said on public television or something to that effect. I do think we're going to get that handful, and it's a small number, yes. But if we don't put up rules, and we are a society of rules, it doesn't mean that you can't say what you want to say. It's just you have to choose the words that you use appropriately. And fine, my definition of appropriately may be different than Alderman Sullivan's or Alderman Clemens' words of appropriate, but I think we have done this, and I do think we all know which language we're speaking of. So I'm not on this committee. I won't get to vote today, but I do hope that you do not support this legislation. Thank you.
I have a question for Attorney Bolton, but go ahead. You go first.
No,
Alderman
you go
Gray.
first, please.
So I wanted to ask you about the idea of decorum and how shaky that is, because something that occurred to me was it could say did not adhere to the decorum of this chamber. Is that too vague?
Yes, it's too vague. It will encapsulate too much.
Yeah.
And it will leave too much discretion up to whoever's the presiding officer to apply it. It could be applied in some cases too strictly, in other cases too leniently. You pretty much in this area have to try and set clear guidance as to what is prohibited. And
So
without actually providing a list of words, I think this is about as best as can be done.
Thank you. My follow-on question is, this is actually fairly new language. I remember Alderman Dowd brought it in maybe in my first term. Previous to this language, would I as chair not be able to cut off somebody's comments?
You would not?
Okay.
Unless there's a prohibition, you have opened this up to be a public forum. And you've got to tell people what they can't do. And if you're going to apply standards to them. So, no, if you cut this out and you say, well, we can just, anyone we think is out of control or not adhering to general expectations of decorum, that's not gonna pass muster. Doesn't mean you'll get sued every time, but if you do get sued, you'll probably lose.
Interesting. Alderman Gouveia, I had you next.
Can I just, it's something, nothing about what we're talking about.
You're good.
So the red light went off on this thing and I can't get it back on. So I don't know what's going on with the recording. It's not, the red light's not going on. So I don't know if it's recording, it's not recording, it doesn't look like it is. But it was, because I had it started.
So I think that in the absence of that's messed up, they still have the
Okay.
CTV feed that they can use.
Okay, good, thank you.
Correct me if I'm wrong in the booth. Yeah, okay, good.
I haven't seen anybody from the booth, so.
No, but I think that has been in the past, has been a
Okay.
backup if we
Okay,
can't,
cool.
if that goes down, but thank you for that. Alderman Gouveia, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a few things that I would like to look over on this, so I'm going to move that we place O-23-054 back on the table.
The motion is to put this back on the table. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
That motion does not carry. We are still back at recommending final passage.
Can I make one?
Alderman,
I really don't want to labor on this, but my colleague said that the reason, look at the chamber and no one's here. But from what I hear, and I'm in the community all the time, is that they don't want to hear the language. They don't want to hear people coming in yelling, screaming. The same people at that, they know exactly who comes in. So they already know that in advance. Why would you come? So they watch this on TV and they said the same old, the same people come here saying the same old thing, always angry. I'm talking about people from the public that comes in here to speak. Very few people come in here to say positive things. They do it with their vote.
okay. So the motion before us is to recommend final passage. Is there an additional conversation? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
That does not, motion does not carry. We need an additional motion.
You put it to what?
So we have to, I feel like we always get this wrong. We either have to just, okay, Alderman Clemmons knows.
Well, Madam Chair, I'm going to ask you a question. How do you feel about the first two words?
Crude vulgar,
Yes.
I could take them or leave them. I think they're the most interpretive.
Squishy.
I'm going to make a motion to amend.
Okay,
So my amendment would take out the words crude and vulgar in number 10. And it would start with the word profane and or obscene remarks are prohibited and it would continue. So essentially, it would read, number 10, profane and/or obscene remarks are prohibited, and number 11, the presiding officer, ...
You've heard the motion. Any issues? Alderman Gouveia?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I applaud my colleague for bringing forward the amendment. I'm not going to support it because I do believe that still leaves us open to a potential lawsuit. I don't think this fixes the problem that was originally outlined. So I won't be supporting it, but I do applaud you for putting it forward, and I wish we could have tabled it and looked at some other language, but it is what it is.
The motion is to amend. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, so that motion carries. Alderman Clemmons?
I would move to recommend final passage as amended.
The motion is to recommend O 2354 as amended by this committee. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
That motion carries. Okay. We have general discussion. Everyone discussed enough? Go ahead, Alderman.
Has nothing to do with it. Just want to
Okay.
let everyone know that the fireworks has been postponed until Wednesday, including everything except the ball game. The ball game is still 10 o'clock on tomorrow. Hopefully it doesn't rain, but have a good 4th of July, everyone.
Anyone else? I was gonna make that announcement. So
Okay,
thank you
I'm
for
sorry
that.
to
No,
do
no,
that.
that was perfect. Thank you. You reminded me. Okay, so remarks by Alderman. Alderman Thibault.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Just two things. One, I got to attend the Frederick Douglass reading on Saturday by the NAACP, which was a great event at the library. First time I'd done that, and it was great to read some of the words that he spoke. So I thought that was something good for the city. It was a good attendance.
What's the title?
What?
What is the title of this
What is the
speech?
4th of July?
I'm sorry.
Sorry. And the other thing, which is I just found out about today, which is really good news for the city. So Eversource is dropping their rate to 12.5 cents in August, which is lower than what we have for community power, National Community Power. But I heard today that National Community Power is going to go to 10.5 cents. So that's a huge win for the city. I mean, that's even lower than Eversource was before they raised their rates. So we'll hear more about this as we lead up to August, but if you're on, National Community Power, you just stay there. If you're on a supplier that doesn't give you lower than 10.5 cents, I would move yourself to National Community Power. If you're on Eversource, I'd move there as well. So, but that's great news, and the work of Dory Brown and her department and Matt Sullivan and all those guys working to get us. I was really nervous when I saw Eversource was going to lower. I'm like, that's kind of going to backfire on us after we, got a lower rate while they were higher. But luckily, they did some work, and that came out today. So sure, we'll have more on that. Thank you.
Alderman Thibault. Anyone else?
Can I?
Alderman Timmons?
One other thing, the speech that was held all over the country and all over the state on July 1st is, what is the 4th of July to your slaves? So that was a speech.
I actually was going to comment on that. So I actually was able to participate in the Amherst reading, and it's such a powerful speech when you sit and you hear it and you think about just the title of it is just so profound. And I had a really interesting passage that was pretty damning in terms of how can you talk about freedom when there's so many people here who still aren't free. So I have a hard time not getting very emotional when I'm listening to it, but happy 4th of July, everyone. I think that's an incredible thing that the NAACP and the Black Heritage Trail has put together over the last couple of years, and something to just keep in mind as we roll into Independence Day. Anyone else?
Yeah, I was just going to say happy 4th of July to everybody. Stay safe.
Do I have a motion? Alderman Clemmons.
Motion to adjourn.
The motion is to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you all for coming out on July 3rd.
8:14.